Hey K-popers, and welcome back to Hallyu. This week we're talking about a group that has impressed K-pop fans the world over at every single turn. That is Ateez. We'll start with how they got to debut because Ateez has one of the coolest origin stories out there. Next, we'll see how they were worthy of the term monster rookies in their first year as a group and how that growth has just been out of control ever since. And finally, we'll take a look at what makes Ateez so special and how they've embraced their heritage to become 4th generation leaders in K-pop. Before we get started, I want to quickly thank Hallyu's honorary producers. If you want to show off your bias group here, share your pics in weekly videos, and join a vibrant Discord community with watch parties, custom emoji, and more, all you need to do is support Hallyu on Patreon. So as I said, Ateez might have one of the coolest debut stories in K-pop. Why? Well, because Ateez truthfully got their start with a single mixtape. Back in 2016, Hongjung, who would go on to be Ateez's leader, really admired Block B. As a result, he wanted to become a trainee at their label, KQ Entertainment, and sent them a letter along with a sample mixtape that he made. At the time, KQ had 0 trainees, but after hearing the mixtape, KQ brought Hongjung on as their only trainee. Eventually, he would be joined by the other future members over the course of about 18 months, some of whom came from other labels like former big hit trainees Yeosang and Wooyoung. During their pre-debut era, the group's internal name was KQ Fellas, and they did a lot of different stuff before actually debuting. They started off with a dance cover of the famous Dex song Pick It Up, and then they filmed their own pre-debut web series called KQ Fellas American Training. This was a pretty interesting show where the members all flew to LA and they trained at the Millennium Dance Complex, which culminated with a pre-debut single called From. And that wasn't it. The boys also had a reality show during the summer of 2018 before their debut, on which it was revealed their name would officially be Ateez. The show was aired on Mnet and it was called Codename is Ateez. And so the 8 members of Ateez, Hongjung, Sunghwa, Yoonho, Yeosang, Sun, Mingi, Wooyoung, and Jongho, were all set to debut and start their careers as a boy group. And that they did on October 24th, 2018 with their debut EP Treasure Episode 1 All to Zero. This album had double lead singles, and on its release we got the MVs for Pirate King and Treasure. Treasure is still one of my favorite Ateez songs to this day, and it set the tone perfectly for what Ateez stood for. I don't think it can be encapsulated any better than this picture of the boys holding Ateez branded flags. The scene is so epic and grand, and the boys look so badass and ready to conquer the world. And boy did they ever conquer. I know a lot of groups hit the ground running, but as we're gonna see, wow were Ateez the definition of a monster rookie. The EP reached number 7 on the Gaon albums chart, and to date it has sold over 107,000 copies. For a debut album, that is insane. And they did not miss a beat because it was just 10 weeks later that their comeback EP Treasure Episode 2 0 to 1 was announced. The MV for the lead single Say My Name came out 12 days later, along with another MV for Hala Hala just a couple of weeks later. This first comeback from the boys was another huge success, climbing another spot higher on the charts and selling over 118,000 copies. And what's really impressive too is that Ateez were already planting the seeds for global presence. With just their debut and their first comeback, they had already charted in Korea up to number 5 on the US World Albums chart and had broken into charting in France and Belgium. Ateez capitalized on their immediate success by launching the Expedition Tour, which was an American tour through New York City, Chicago, Dallas, Atlanta, and Los Angeles. This tour was so successful that it was extended into April with a ton of sold-out stops all over Europe, including cities like London, Paris, Berlin, Stockholm, Moscow, and others. Then in May 2019, Ateez took to the stage in Japan for the first time at KCON 2019 Japan. And 1 month later, in June, they once again extended their tour and planned 2 stops in Australia, namely Melbourne and Sydney. So let's just pause for a second. At this point, it's August 2019. Ateez are about 10 months old as a group, and they've already sold out 250,000 albums and toured North America, Europe, Japan, and Australia. Are you seeing why these boys are monster rookies yet? And they still weren't done. On October 8th, Ateez released the first studio album called Treasure EP Fin All to Action, which featured the hit Wonderland. This album was insanely popular, nearly doubling their total sales with 248,000 of its own, and it earned Ateez their first #1 album on Gaon. They capped off the unbelievable year with a Japanese debut album, and it was clear from what they had accomplished that they were a force to be reckoned with. For their success, Ateez were awarded the Next Generation Award at the 2019 Golden Disc Awards, as well as the 2019 MAMA for Worldwide Fans' Choice, an award for which they would repeat in 2020. Obviously, with 2020 came massive challenges for every K-pop group, but by the time the pandemic arrived, Ateez were very well positioned with their global fanbase and their diverse talents. Just before the world shut down, they dropped the conclusion to their Treasure series and its lead single Answer, which once again pulled in huge numbers. And though their second world tour was indefinitely postponed due to COVID-19, that didn't stop them from performing for their fans. They hosted a free virtual concert on V Live at the end of May. This concert was watched by 1.4 million people, proving just how big Ateez had become in a vast world of K-pop boy groups. As summer rolled around, Ateez embarked on their next chapter, starting the Zero Fever series with the first album, Zero Fever Part 1, and its song Inception, which was voted on by fans. Ateez's success at this point was frankly just out of control, and to date this album has sold 400,000 copies. The boys continued keeping busy despite the pandemic with more TV appearances and performances, including at the 2020 Mamas, where it was revealed that they would be participating in Kingdom Legendary War. Ahead of their appearance, Ateez dropped Zero Fever Part 2 and again smashed their previous sales record, topping 500,000 this time around. And on the competition show, Ateez shined and delivered incredible performances which culminated in their final song, The Real. Ateez placed 3rd overall on Kingdom Legendary War, and even though they were already popular, boy did they get another boost in popularity from the show. As many of you likely know, just a couple of days ago Ateez dropped Zero Fever Part 3 and the song Deja Vu, and as I reported last Sunday, they destroyed their previous sales record even before the album was out. Just in pre-orders alone, Ateez cleared 810,000 copies sold, a monumental number made all the more impressive by the fact that they aren't at a Big 4 label. It's clear that Ateez are here to stay and that they're on top of the K-pop world, and I think there's a good reason for that. As I alluded to at the start, right from their debut, Ateez defined who they are with an expansive, epic sound and a look to match. They've proven time and time again that their badass image is for real, but it's more refined than that. When you watch an Ateez MV, there's a certain grandeur about these 8 boys and their music that's really hard to describe. They deliver such a full-bodied sound and visuals and scenes that are frankly awe-inspiring, and it's in that image that I think Ateez has found their niche and absolutely nailed it. And you can tell this is a group full not only of talent but of passion. I mean, their leader Hongjoon literally started all this by going out of his way to send KQ a mixtape and ask to be a trainee. And speaking of KQ, I think it's really clear how the members of Ateez have embraced their heritage while not allowing it to define them. They were of course preceded by Block B at that label, and in many ways you can feel that influence. I'd argue there's no other boy group that's more like the second coming of Block B and BAP than Ateez. Yet thanks to all of their hard work and talent, they've built their own fantastic name for themselves. And hey, they even won a 2020 Hallyu Music Award for Best B-Track with their song Horizon. No matter how you slice it, Ateez are superstars, and they're leading the way as a premier 4th generation boy group in the world of K-pop. So what do you think of Ateez's rapid ascent to superstardom? Do you think they'll clear 1 million sales with Zero Fever Part 3 when all is said and done? I'd love to hear your thoughts on this epic boy group in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching this deep dive, and if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss all the great K-pop content coming your way right here at Hallyu. This has been Deep Dive number 71, Ateez.